Communication. Communication is an amazing part of life. If you can't get this part right, you're not going to do very well in life. It is absolutely, positively huge. It's the be-all, end-all if you're in sales, but we're always selling people on our ideas. We're always trying to have positive relationships. We're always trying to influence people. So communication is a huge component of life and very significant in NLP. Because sometimes we're using NLP to communicate to people and get our ideas across and almost help change their programming subliminally. We're also looking at the communication that people are using so we can pick up on their systems, model them, and then grab their skills. So shameless plug, I've got a great training on communication if you want to get more in depth in this, but for now let's drive on. I'll tell you, if you only want to learn one thing about communication today, what I want you to walk away with, you should literally write this on a post-it and tack it to your wall. It'll help you understand communication and help you communicate better. Remember, regardless of what you think, communication is the response that you get. You can say something to somebody and they can take it the wrong way. Isn't that true? And you say, well, that's their fault for getting it wrong. No, it's feedback. It's feedback that you need to change your communication. Say the thing a different way. You may need to apologize in between. Say the thing a different way until you get the response you get. Now, salespeople are always watching for this. They're saying something and looking at what the person heard. Sometimes you say, this is an amazing value. And what they hear is, you're selling too hard. Or this thing's going to be really expensive. Okay? They're not getting the right message. So you got to say it a different way. If you instead say, hey, I've got a great way that you can save 90% on this, then instead of saying you're getting a great value and them thinking it's too high, they thinking, hey, I'm getting a great deal, I'm getting a huge discount. It changes the way they think about it. Now, you said the exact same thing, basically two different ways, but they also took it two different ways. So remember, communication is always the response you get. You want to constantly be looking for the feedback and adjusting what you're saying. And learn certain communication tools that you can use, certain words and phrases that tend to get a certain response. Then you know those are good, solid phrases to use and use them over and over and over again. So, communication is the response you get. Put this on a post-it, tack it onto your wall, and your communication skills will go through the roof. Next, they did an amazing study on this, and this is how communication actually breaks down. I can remember thinking, boy, you know, there's something really intense going on. Maybe somebody died, or you got to break some bad news to somebody, or you got to tell them something that's kind of sensitive, and you say, geez, boy, I hope I say the right thing. You know, I never wanted to say the wrong thing to somebody. So when I was trying to figure out what to say, and this was my naivete at the time, I always thought that the importance of what you were saying was the words you were using. And later I found out, literally through this study, that I was doing it wrong, because fully 93% isn't verbal. It's tone and body language. Only 7% of the communication that people get, the message they get from them to you, is verbal, what you actually say. So the thing that I was worrying about the most, and I think most people do this as well, was the thing that mattered the least. You know? It's not what you say, it's more about how you say it. And if you've ever had a good friend talk to you, a lot of times they're telling you things you know. It's not really news. They're not really giving you any solutions or information. But because they're using a wonderful, warm tone with you, and you can tell from their expression, their body language, that they're really worried about you, you knew that somebody cared. And it made a huge shift in your life. Why? Because you're a grown adult. You can solve your own problems. But you just want to know that somebody cared. This is also why a comedian can walk up and call you a weenie and you laugh. Why? What they said on the verbal, very logically, put that through your computer, is this guy just insulted me. I should beat him about the head and face. Okay, that's what the verbal is. But the tone and the body language and the expression and the circumstances is, no, he's doing this because he's playing with me. This guy must trust me and like me and know that he can tease me and cajole me. And I'll laugh at that. And you know what? He's not wrong 99.9% of the time. Why? because 93% of the communication was the tone and the body language and the expression that he used. The verbal meant almost nothing. So verbal is not that important. Tone. Tone means the way in which you say something. Are you being empathetic? Are you being caring? Are you being sarcastic? Are you trying to be funny? Are you trying to be understanding? Are you being angry? Are you being authoritative? These are all different tones. I remember there was some wonderful happy tones my mom would make, and there were some angry tones she would make. You know, I can remember that with my professors and bosses and everything else. Sometimes it's not what they say, it's how they say it. You know, your boss walks up to you and he says, "Hey, great job, Paul." Or your boss walks up to you and says, "Yeah, great job, Paul." Two totally different experiences. Now, body language is huge too. Remember we said people always talk with their hands? It's a huge part of how you express yourself. So facial expression is huge, along with hand gestures, even how you sit, how you cross your legs, whether you got your hand on your chin. All these different types of body language type things are huge. This is why you can turn the sound off on the TV. You're not hearing the verbal, tone's gone, but you can still kind of sort of almost tell what's going on. Why? Because you're still getting 55% of the communication from the body language. This is the hardest part of acting. People can remember and read the lines, and if you can't, they'll give you a damn teleprompter. The tone, you know how to affect your tone pretty well without too many acting lessons, but getting that facial expression, that body language, that non-verbal verbal part down, oh, that's what makes a great actor. So these are the important parts of communication. Let's drive on because there's much, much more. Now, communication can happen a lot of different ways. I remember my friend Nick, he said, when I go into a meeting, I always make sure I got a goal. And if I say everything that I say is based on going towards that goal, I win the conversation. Most people just come into a conversation and they have no goal. They're just going to talk about whatever comes up. I know my exact goal, the outcomes I want. I've got a strategy in place. So look at the first two, goal-oriented, strategy. And then what does he weave in? Well, I've got a process that I do. I like to do this first, second, and third. I'm always weaving in these tools of influence. Another shameless plug. I've got an entire course on tools of influence. And then I'm watching the person. I'm getting that feedback. I'm adjusting as I need to. I'm making sure that they're getting the meaning that I meant. Okay? Communication is the response you get. And that is perfect communication. And I want you to go down through these lists. Communication can be a lot of different things. It can be a goal that you want to get. It can be seeking to influence somebody. It can be reframing something. I do this in therapy a lot. I want to give a different meaning to something. Okay? This horrible experience means that you learned something. This horrible experience means you're stronger now. This horrible experience is why you're getting all these coping skills. And also, this horrible experience is over. So this is a great time in your life. Thank God you're not the beginning of this problem. These are all reframes. It changes what? The meaning. Huge part of communication. Now, the other big part of communication that I'm always worried about, this is called self-talk. I talk about this a lot in my REBT course, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, is how do you talk to yourself? The most important part of self-talk is the self-talk that you do in your head. What you say to yourself. And this is a huge part of neurolinguistic programming. Think about what neurolinguistic programming is. We're trying to figure out how other people talk to themselves so that they can be successful, and then we can duplicate that self-talk inside ourselves. It's a huge part of how we clone their success. So you have to be very careful how you talk to yourself. I read a great quote the other day. It said, "Don't let your mind dwell on anything that doesn't bring you joy." Which means don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. Focus on what's great in your life, not what's wrong in your life. Don't be mean to yourself. Don't say, "Why are you such a dummy? Why do you always screw things up? This always happens to me." All this negative, negative, negative self-talk. If you hear yourself making a negative self-statement, turn it around. Okay? Don't say, why does this always happen to me? Say, thank goodness this is over. That's one less problem I'm going to have in my life. There are two ways to describe the same thing. One will make you feel empowered and feel great. The other will make you feel disempowered, less able to handle the situation, and feel lousy. Your communication with yourself, the quality of your self-talk will determine the quality of your life and the resources you can tap into. There is communication you can do, like I said, that will empower you, and communication that will disempower you. One gives you resources and strength, and one takes it away. You got to diminish the negative and increase the positive. Self-talk is huge. Now, neurolinguistic programming. This is a classic neurolinguistic programming move. This is the linguistic piece. Literally, the words you use will determine how you feel. Let me say that again. The words you use, self-talk, the words you use, the specific words you choose, will determine how you feel. Now in here, I'm showing them how you use it for intensity. Now this is the anger scale. You can be furious, which is more intense than mad, which is more intense than upset, which is more intense than bothered, which is more intense than miffed, which is more intense than peeved. So what you want to do is, if you're at the top of the scale, you want to move yourself down. Now, I could come up with a list like this that was making you feel better, and you'd want to go from the bottom up. So you want to decrease language that works against you, and you may want to upgrade and increase the language that makes you feel fantastic. So work your way down through the scale. If you're saying you're furious, switch it to mad. If you're mad, switch it to upset. If you're upset, switch it to bothered. Just work your way down over time. Great, great technique. You can do this with other people too. Somebody says, oh my God, I'm so furious at my boss. You won't believe what they did. And they go, blah, 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 blah. And you can say, well, I can see why you'd be mad about that. And they'll go, you're damn right, I'm mad, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, wow. I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, I'd be upset if that happened too. And they'll say, well, you're right, I was very upset. I was blah, 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 blah. And you go, yeah, that would have bothered me. And they'll go, yeah, it bothered me all day long. Notice how I took them from furious to mad to upset to bothered. You go down one tier at a time, because if you say, oh my God, I'm so mad, I'm furious, you don't know what my boss did to me, let me tell you, and your response back is, yeah, I'd have been a little peeved too. They're like, peeved? No, I'm furious, you don't understand what I'm saying. You can only take them down one tick at a time. Sometimes you need to take yourself down through the levels too. So great examples. These are specific skills you can use. Go out and practice them, and every day you'll get better and better at it. Now here's some other ways, great ways that you can change language. We talked about furious becomes mad, mad becomes upset, upset becomes challenged, but you can do it in other areas too. There's certain things that will block your resources, that make things seem like they can't possibly happen. When you say something is unbearable, this is when you have a nervous breakdown. This is when you get crushed. This is when people go insane. Don't ever say something's unbearable. Hell, you're bearing it. I already know it's not unbearable because you're still here. You'd already shot yourself in the head if it was unbearable. You'd already thrown yourself in front of the train. Okay? So stop using words like unbearable, which makes you feel absolutely awful. Switch it out and say, well, it's not really unbearable. It's just really hard. This is really hard. I don't want to kid myself. I don't want to be unrealistic and say, oh, that's light and easy. No. But it's not unbearable, it's hard. I can solve hard things. I solve hard problems every day. I don't know about you, but if you've got a life like mine, yeah, you have hard things happen. When you say something's impossible, your brain listens to everything you say. That's part of neurolinguistic programming and REBT too. Your brain is a stupid goal-seeking mechanism. It does what you tell it and it believes what you say to it. If you say something is impossible, oh, you can't solve that, it's impossible. Your brain says, yes, sir, yes, madam, I have got my instructions. Your simple servant here will now take your instructions. I know it's impossible. I will stop looking for any and all solutions. Thank you for informing me. My goal here is accomplished. The impossible is now impossible. But if you say, hey, this is difficult, but there's a way out, I'll bet you if I kick it around for a while, I'll think of something. Your brain says, yes, sir, yes, madam. I am on that. We got our best people on it. I'm going to work on this 24/7 even while you're sleeping. This is difficult, but we can solve it. I will get on that, and eventually an answer will float to the top. You can turn your brain on or shut your brain off using this kind of language. This is why people choke at tests. They say, oh my God, I always choke when I go into a test. Your brain says, instruction received, and you know what happens next. So, you also have to look at the bottom section here, problem, failure, loser. What I want you to do is notice that these are different philosophies, different ways of thinking about things. Philosophies are huge in terms of the way that your mind works. So you can say, I have a problem, but I like to use the philosophy that's not a problem, it's a challenge. People hate problems. Nobody wants more problems. People like challenges. Playing sports is a challenge. Playing cards is a challenge. Figuring out a puzzle is a challenge. Doing a video game is a challenge. Throwing darts is a challenge. Going bowling is a challenge. Most games are challenges. So I like to think of it as a game or a challenge as opposed to a problem. Then I feel fantastic when I solve it. Why? Because I won at the game of life. Literally. Failure becomes feedback. Failure is actually part of the scientific method. How do you learn something in science? You have a hypothesis. Turns out not to be true. You try something over and over and over again, also known as what? Massive failure, until you hit the one thing that actually works, also known as what? Massive success, and you win. So it's not failure because I got what? I got feedback. So I changed failure into feedback. You know, I figured out one way how not to get the solution that I wanted, or one thing that doesn't work. So if you got a list of like 10 things that you want to try, I don't mind losing on any of those, having a quote-unquote failure. It's not a failure, it's feedback. It tells me that number 1, 2, and 3 aren't going to work. Guess what? 1 in 7 chance one of the remaining ones are going to work. I get really excited when I failed 9 times on a list of 10 things because I feel rock solid certain that that last one's going to work. Feels great instead of feeling terrible. Now the next one, I'm a loser, becomes I had a setback. You can't be a loser until you quit. It's not a Rocky story unless you have a few setbacks, unless there's some kind of adversary, something to push back against. You don't have a great story in your life when you say, well, here's how I turned $1 million into 50 cents in worthless real estate. No, the great one is when you have a bunch of setbacks. Here's how I turned 50 cents in worthless real estate into $1 million with like 12 people jumping on my back and trying to stop me, and let me tell you that story. That's a great story. So don't tell yourself you're a loser. You're not a loser until you quit. You simply had a setback. You need to reevaluate, replan, kick some ass. It's almost like a numbers game. If you do something often enough, eventually you're going to win. And once you get that winning formula, just like the scientific method, you can do it over and over and over again and win over and over and over again. They call that massive success. Finally, I want to talk to you about something called your explanatory style and analogies. Explanatory, look at the root word. It comes from the root word explain. It's how you explain things to yourself. Anthony Robbins uses a great one. He says, you know, your girlfriend or your boyfriend dumps you, and how you're going to feel is based on how you explain it to yourself. Do you say, oh, this is horrible, and they left me, and nobody will ever love me? Or, thank God they left so somebody decent can come into my life. You know, those are two totally different explanations for the exact same thing. One makes you feel horrible, and the other one makes you feel fantastic. And actually, the one that makes you feel fantastic is much more likely of being true. And after a couple of days, you realize that, and that's why most people usually start out feeling bad, because we tend to go towards the negative. Then they explain it to themselves different, and then they feel better. And why not do it instantly? Why not learn that this is a technique and you can tap into this power anytime you want? Let me give you one more example of explanatory style. You get laid off from work, you know, common layoffs. You can tell yourself, oh my God, why did this happen to me? You know, this is horrible. I'm going to lose all this money. Or you can say, hey, explain a different way. I used to have one job. I was stuck in that job. I've been doing it for years. Now I get to go out and I get to do something new, different, exciting. Now I have an infinite number of jobs I could be working at. I could find a new job that pays me more, that has more possibilities, that gives me more joy, more fulfillment in life. It's exciting. You can be excited instead of depressed. It's totally up to you. This is how you control your emotions. And you can also use these analogies and these explanatory styles to change the way other people feel about things. So neurolinguistic programming is the science of how your brain works. So when you understand how your brain works, like I said, apply these things to yourself so you have a deep, rich understanding of them, and then immediately go out and try them on somebody else. Now, the next thing is analogies. People will say things like, you say, how's your day going? They go, oh, just another day in the battlefield. Oh, that's going to make you feel terrible. Who wants to go to war? This is not great. Or they say, this job is draining the life out of me. Okay? You need to tone this down a little bit. Say it was a rough day at work, but I came through. You know? Job was tough, but I made it out the other side. Okay? Tone it down. You could say, hey, I had a hard day at work, but I beat it like I always do. I was kicking ass and taking names. That's another way to describe it. Okay? They beat everybody else, but they didn't beat me. Another way to describe it. So use positive analogies in your life. Okay? You will feel great. Remember, this is another form of self-talk, and self-talk determines how you feel, which will determine your entire life.